Winter sports economies rely heavily on international cooperation, from athlete training and coaching to event management and sports technology. My next guest is a pioneer in the digital sports space and one of the leading relationship brokers and industry connectors in global sports. I speak to Jimmy Lynn. I met Lynn in our studios in Washington. Sports management, these international partnerships, you've been involved, you've watched all of this stuff. Talk to me about the importance of these relationships and what you've witnessed and seen, and how does it all play out on the global stage?
I think it's really important. I mean, the U.S. is by far the best market in terms of revenue generation, monetization, like how you make money. And the U.S. is the leader, but it's only 340 million people. But you look at some of these countries at 1.4 billion people, there are a lot of opportunities. So what I've done is I try to do is share U.S. best practices in sports, in London, in Rio de Janeiro, in Tokyo, in Beijing, in Doha. And for the most part, it's receptive. I'm not saying the American way is the way, but I'm like, this is how the U.S. makes money in sports, whether it's media, on the ticketing, on the sponsorship, on the commerce. And to a lot of these countries, that's new to them, and we're here to teach them.
Lynn is a co-founder of Kiswe Mobile, an interactive cloud-based video technology company that builds and operates digital streaming platforms for sports and entertainment content worldwide. You see this industry evolving, Winter Olympics, Winter Games. Talk to me about the evolution, what we've seen since the last time we talked about, and what you see moving forward.
Well, I also think if you take a step back and you look at the Summer Olympics and the Winter Olympics, when you and I were growing up, they were always the same year, right? Then in '92 was when it started to go separately, where Lillehammer was held in '94. And I actually was there for that. And it was a really eye-opener for me because you're in this like small town in Norway, right? And you think about like where the Summer Olympics have been held just recently, right? They were in Rio de Janeiro, they were in London, they were in Tokyo, they were in Paris, and they're gonna be in LA, versus the Winter Olympics, which are for the most part in a lot of small towns, the smaller, like Salt Lake City. I was there for the Salt Lake City Winter Olympics, so it's pretty interesting to see the evolution. But I mean, what's going to happen with the Olympics and coming up? It's going to be tremendous. The ratings are just going to be through the roof.
It's interesting. You threw out Lillehammer and even in Milan, I think it's kind of spread out. And there are these kind of traditional markets that you see, right. And then you see like China has emerged as kind of a newer market. Talk to me about the differences between
historically, Winter Olympics have been primarily in Europe and here in the U.S. The U.S. has hosted it 4 times. It's in Norway, it's in Sweden, and it's in France. It's been in Canada a couple of times, which makes a lot of sense, right? That those are winter ski towns, but it's fascinating them, when they hosted the Winter Olympics in Beijing in 2022, because that's the first time it was in China. It's been in Japan twice, but that's part of this global sports movement about hosting, whether it's the Olympics or the World Cups, in these countries that had never hosted it before.
Hosting the Olympics has helped raise the global profile of host cities, spurring infrastructure development and encouraging tourism. You mentioned before we started rolling coming out parties, just kind of how these marquee events can really have something to say about a country. Talk to me about the importance of it all.
Oh, it's hugely important. It's part of the company's strategic plan. And, I teach at Georgetown. We have a campus in Doha, Qatar. I still remember meeting with the Qatar Olympic Committee and World Cup Committee years ago. They're bidding for it. I'm like, there's no way they can beat the U.S. for the World Cup, right? We're 330 million people. They're 2.17 million people. And they did, and a lot of people had never heard of Qatar before, but what the World Cup did is that raised the visibility of Qatar tremendously, and that's part of their 2030 strategic plan, right? It's not unlike we talked about last time, the Beijing 2008 Summer Olympics. That was a coming out party because there wasn't much of a middle class. I mentioned I'd gone to Beijing in 2002 for the Beijing Olympic Media Summit, and there wasn't much of a middle class back then. It was just being formed. And for Beijing in 2008, that was middle class and the brands, we are here, right? Like I love to talk about Visa. Like credit cards weren't used in China that much back then. It was mostly a cash society. But for Visa, it was a fantastic move. Coca-Cola, it was a fantastic move, right? So it's interesting. In Saudi Arabia hosting the World Cup in 2034, it's really like we are here to play.
And one of the things that I think is really interesting about China, maybe you can talk a little bit about this. I've mentioned it before. You know, you go, you see the bird's nest. It's used still. It's not just they built this facility and the Olympics are over. There's thought that goes into it. Can you talk to me about infrastructure, building infrastructure? Because this is really a commitment from these countries.
And it's fascinating because a lot of the Summer Olympics games in these big cities, in LA, in Paris, in Tokyo, they already have existing venues. They don't have to build out a whole lot, right? I think London had to build out a couple things, but for the most part, you don't. But on the Winter Olympics, it's much different because they're in smaller cities. But what China did brilliantly was they used the 22 Winter Olympics to really invest heavily in winter sports. So I think the latest stats I read, there are over 400 million Chinese that are involved in winter sports. That's more than live in the U.S. But that's part of the plan. Then it has to do with infrastructure. You're building out roads, you're building out new buildings, right? And you're building this whole new industry in a market that previously wasn't that important to the winter sports industry. So think about for brands, right? And ski manufacturers, endemic and it's tremendous. Not only that, a lot of tourists, it's a place for tourists to go.
Talk to me about the spillover effect of the Winter Olympics, because it does impact tourism, education. It's kind of, walk us through that.
Yeah, I mean, certain countries have done it really well. I mean, they like to talk about the Vancouver Olympics in 2010, which was a huge success, and for a number of fronts. One, Canada had built out their own platform where they wanted to focus on which winter sports Canadians do best at. Let's invest in that, and they did really well in the medal standings, medal rankings, right? And so, but also the whole Vancouver, Calgary, the skiing area is tremendous, and it's one of the best places to go. And so that's a key part of it too.
Used to be a complaint though, like, oh, you're pouring all this money in, what do we get out of it? But now people have figured it out, right?
Right.
Talk to us a little bit about China. You don't really think of it as a winter destination or,
right.
When the Winter Olympics were there, some people were kind of scratching their heads. And yet what we've seen since that time is just kind of this enormous interest in winter sports now in China. And that's the other part of this that people don't talk about.
Right. I think what China's always been smart about is investing in the systems and the coaching, right? So back in 2002, when I was in Beijing, they took me I went to meet with the head of the Beijing gymnastics team, the famous teams in the 70s, 80s. When you saw the pictures on the wall, you the guys in the Iron Horse, like those guys are amazing, right? But you saw how much they put into the coaching and what kind of impact coaching had. Because if you look at China, I mean, they did that in those sports, and then more recently, they've been doing that in basketball or soccer or global football, where they say, 300 million Chinese playing basketball, 300 million Chinese playing soccer. But a lot of that is building into those youth systems, trying to identify players that are going to be good. And it works.
Technology is also changing how people watch and interact with the games. Talk to me about, from an Olympic standpoint, it used to be and you'd watch it on TV but now it's different, isn't it? It's fragmented. There's so many different platforms. How do you monetize it, make it so it works for you?
Well, I mean, I remember going to a Washington Redskins playoff game in 92 or 93 with Jim Simpson, the legendary, who lived in Bethesda. And he told me the 1960 Olympics, something like they aired 10 hours of TV programming, right? And then I remember, at AOL for the 96 Atlanta Olympics, 98 Nagano Olympics, 2010 Sydney Olympics, we were trying to get them to put Olympics content on the internet, and the broadcast networks didn't want to do it, right? They used to say, hey, if we're paying $1 billion, we're going to make this back on commercials and sponsorship. It's not going to be. We're not going to show anything live on the internet, right? And so I thought NBC, and I have lots of friends at NBC, and there's a few Georgetown alums running NBC Olympics. They did a spectacular job, I think, with the Paris Games, where they actually showed a lot of the events live on their digital platforms. And then they packaged it to run at night, which is more, around the marquee athletes. But the ratings didn't take a hit. I thought they did a really good job of mixing the digital and the linear TV. and it's like a couple thousand hours of programming, right? And it works. And that's always been my argument. Our argument is how, how many sports are there? They focus on the marquee sports, but there are all these other niche sports that may not be as popular or countries, but like they don't show that on linear TV. But through digital, whether it's the internet or mobile or streaming, you could show everything, right? And you can follow all your different favorite athletes.
But I guess the sense would be, just coming at it from a legacy point of view, it's like, oh, it's so splintered, like we're so used to getting our nut here, but now we've got to get the pies cut on so many different ways. Is it getting people to think differently? I mean, what's been, because you've been there at the forefront. Talk to me about it.
Well, I mean, it literally, we were AOL was the internet. I mean, my students don't know who it is, but I said, it's how your parents and grandparents got on the internet. But now it's TikTok. Like TikTok and Instagram Reels is really having an effect. And just those short form clips, the younger people, that's how they want to watch content. I mean, I go to the NFL games. I ask my Georgetown undergrad students, how many of you watch an NFL game 3 hours? The answer is 0. They're watching it more on Red Zone where you're getting on clips, so you're watching your favorite players, right? And fantasy football has effect, gambling has effect. So for the younger generation, they want to consume content much more in short form. They're not there for the long form content. And I think the big media companies are grasping that and programming it across the board.
You say grasping, but is there still hesitancy there? I mean, do you still run up against it like when you talk to some of these folks?
Some, but they know the truth is the truth, right? And so they are doing that. And, so what's interesting is, the model that we talked about a few years ago was we predicted, like direct to consumers coming. And it's coming. And so basically, if you read the sports news, the regional sports network model is imploding, and a lot of teams are getting out of the RSN contracts, right? As one of the issues is if you're a regional sports network, you can't really tell the team who your fans are, right? But then when you go through a digital way, through direct to consumer, because you have to register for the app, you know much more about the consumer. When we say data is the new gold. So I'm a co-founder of an interactive live stream company called Kiswe, and we do the direct consumer of 3 NBA teams, a couple WNBA teams, and an NHL team. And the chief marketing officer of these teams, I have access to I've never had access to all this data before. When you have access to that data, there's so much you can do in terms of marketing, specifically to them. Tickets, what kind of sodas they drink, what kind of food they eat. You can provide discounts, and it really creates a great bunch of data, but it also allows you to market much better, and the numbers go up on the D2C model, and that's coming and coming.
AI is transforming the games, helping commentators track athletes' movements, and organizers track energy efficiency.
I've attended 4 or 5 major sports tech conferences the last 2 years. And C-level executives, team owners, brands, media companies, and usually at the end of it, it's 5 minutes to go, they'll say, hey, Mike, what's coming? You have a minute. What are you focusing on in the next 3 to 5 years? 95% of every executive at all 5 conferences says AI, how AI is going to be transformative. We're still in the top of the first inning. We're maybe 3 years away, but it's coming. And then the last NBA Technology Summit last February, Jensen Huang, the head of NVIDIA, got there, and he was just fascinating about how AI can impact sports in different ways. So as my co-founders of Kids, we are these brilliant PhDs, technologies. And as my one partner said, when I came here from Belgium in the 90s and I saw what the web browser can do and open up the web, that was transformative technology. I haven't seen another type of technology since AI. And when I hear people, one after another, brilliant people saying that, it's like what we went through with the internet in the mid-90s, right? It just so I'm putting more and more focus on AI and pushing my students go really study what AI is about, because it's going to have a big impact in health and many others. But I'm focused on the sports side, and it's definitely going to have a significant impact on the sports industry.
Sustainability has become more and more important.
Every bit, Olympics or World Cup, sustainability is a key part.
Yeah, so talk to me about what you're seeing there, because you've been tracing this for some time. What are some of the things that stand out for you about sustainability?
Well, one thing I thought was fascinating was Qatar. You have 2.2 million people, and you have these beautiful new football stadiums. What are you going to do with them? Who's going to go to the matches? But what they did, as part of their bid process, it was like, let's take part of the stadium and give it to less developed countries. And I think that part is fascinating when they do that. I mean, you know, you look at Brazil, the Rio World Cup in 2014, the stadiums are in disrepair for almost every one. You know, I mean, they built that one stadium. The only way you can get to the stadium is by boat, right? Right. And then they built the stadium in Brasilia, their capital. They don't even have like a Division III league. So, you know, you have a 45,000 seat stadium and less than 10,000 fans can go. So, you know, there's a whole revenue problem there.
What are some things that these newer emerging markets can learn from more established markets like the United States who've been playing this game for some time?
Well, I just think in, you know, building out the arenas, not just building out the arenas, but how do you really monetize the arenas? I mean, we look right down the street at Capital One Arena. I mean, they host 220 events a year. That's a lot. But what they've done, you know, it's being transformed. They have these new vault suites, which are VIP. So it's not just for sports events. It's actually businesses that have those suites can use that for business meetings, for personal functions. So all of a sudden, the arena's there for 365 days a year, not just being used during the days of sports events, right? So think about that. I mean, think about for NFL football. You have 8 home games, maybe 9 home games. You got this beautiful stadium. Like, how do you really leverage that more often? So I think some of those best practices are being shared internationally.
One final question before I let you go. How do you think, because it seems like you're at the front end of all the trends when everybody is jumping in after, oh, it's been around for 5 years, now's the time to jump. Well, what is it about your thinking style that causes you to say, now's the time to move?
You know, in order to survive year after year, you have to be on the cutting edge. So it's like, be around smart people, ask a lot of questions and listen. And that's what I've been doing for 30 years. And so I read a lot, listen to the podcasts, and you see what the experts are saying, and it's here. And then I think a lot of people are afraid to get out of their comfort zone. I guess AOL taught me well. And, you know, I was at AOL 14 years. So it was year after year, the business model changed and you had to push to survive. And now I'm doing the same thing with our company, Kiswe now. Like every year there's a different change. So you have to be on top of these trends in order to survive.
Change, adapt.
Change.
Yeah, those are the 2 things we have to do in life. So great to see you. Thanks so much.
All right.